Okay, this is not our next session yet. Our next session is going to be called Road to Congress. But we already see some of our panelists to whom we'll be talking slightly later. But right now we have with us Angela Wilkinson, the Secretary General for the World Energy Council. Hello, Angela.
Hi, Sergey.
Angela, I must have said something else from the beginning, if I may boast a bit. Last month, Global Energy Association awarded its international prize. And for the first time in many years, we managed to award all the three sub-nominations: conventional energy, non-conventional energy, and new applications of energy. This I should add to what we discussed with Minister Novak, because he, of course, touched upon very different angles of the agenda. What do you think about what you've just heard?
I thought it was the Minister Novak and your interview, I thought was very informative and balanced and very positive in terms of potential for humanity for the future.
Humanity for the future. It's an important issue. Interestingly, in the Russian language, there are two words for humankind and humanity. Indeed, it's the same in English. You commit crimes against humanity, you live with a humankind. What about this motto of yours, humanity? Why does it matter?
Well, let me talk a little bit about the theme and also why humanising energy and energy for humanity what matter for the World Energy Council. So, you know, today, Minister Novak and I have launched the theme for the 25th World Energy Congress of Energy for Humanity. The Congress will be hosted by Russia in St. Petersburg from October the 24th to the 22nd in 2022. The theme is important because it sets the global energy agenda and gives new emphasis to the leadership discussions as we head to St. Petersburg. This theme, Energy for Humanity, reminds us of our leadership responsibility to meet the needs of billions of people and connected energy societies, and it resonates with our World Energy Council Vision 2025, Humanising Energy. We often forget that energy is essentially a story about humanity. Human development has always been linked to energy transition, from fire, through fossil and fusion, and onto more energetic futures, imagined but not yet delivered. The evolution of energy has powered human development and social progress for millennia. And energy, for me, is more than a sector. It's the ultimate connector of hopes and fears, of peoples and geographies. The 25th World Energy Congress in St. Petersburg will mark the 100th anniversary of our worldwide energy community. For nearly a century, we have worked to inspire, inform and impact actions to secure the benefits of more and modern energy for all. During the 24th World Energy Congress in Abu Dhabi last year, we discussed how world energy transition has entered a new era. When we formed in 1923, it was just after the global influenza pandemic and before the Great Depression. Our pragmatic focus was on energy for peace. In the midst of the global health emergency, we remain pragmatic in delivering energy transition for people, planet and prosperity. Now, the ways in which energy is being used, traded, transported and produced are changing faster than ever. And Minister Novak alluded to things, new developments around hydrogen, around renewables, around storage. Value creation, which is where the real power for change lies, is continuing to move closer to the end user, to the digitally empowered consumer. And a new leadership mindset has emerged, a shift from supply-side thinking, demand-driven solutions. This means customers are increasingly setting the agenda. We've seen the same in digital technology, where our personal, very individual needs are driving the shape and nature of the smart devices we carry with us always. Now, our World Energy Council vision to humanise energy has rapidly come of age in this crisis. And the events of World Energy Week have shown how technology can pull our whole community together in a quality exchange and conversation and forge new connections and collaborations. Looking ahead, new models of human and economic development, circular, digital, clean and just, will require more energy, as humanity strives for climate neutrality and new ambitions. So to secure the future of the human race, I believe we need the open and balanced approach to managing energy transition, which is the hallmark of the World Energy Council. For a century, we've been fully independent and impartial, and as Secretary General, I have no intention or desire to change this successful World Energy Council tradition. The COVID crisis has had a brutal and uneven impact on energy. Recovery is not going to be easy and will only be possible with a vibrant and integrated response. As a collaborative and innovation community, we can convene and catalyse the cooperation between energy and all sectors of society to deliver a reliable and affordable energy and less carbon. In St. Petersburg in 2022, we will reconvene quite simply as the World Energy Community. We will reflect on our actions to humanise energy and our role in helping societies emerge stronger and together from this crisis. We will have honest and down-to-earth conversations about building and transforming energy systems across the world. At the St. Petersburg World Energy Congress in 2022, we will reaffirm our ongoing responsibility to inspire, inform, and impact the quality of life for everyone and generations to come. Let me quote Minister Novak from a press release about the theme launch. The underlying theme for the World Energy Congress unites the global energy sector and all its stakeholders, bringing us closer, instilling confidence in finding appropriate solutions and long-term balance. The journey to St. Petersburg will create pathways which meet the challenges of more energy and climate neutrality in a new context of affordability and social justice. We can leverage our core principles of neutrality, independence and pragmatism and move beyond regional agendas and work with realistic hope in the face of fear of the unknown and disruption. I am certain that our community-wide capacity for meaningful discussions in the spirit of mutual respect and understanding will contribute real progress that we can celebrate together as we mark the 100th anniversary of the World Energy Community. For me, the St. Petersburg World Energy Congress in 2022, on the theme of Energy for Humanity, is the one event none of us should miss. Thank you.
Thank you so much indeed, Angela. Human beings have recently been approached with the question, do we consider ourselves the kings of the nature? To which we said yes, and we were given a crown, commonly known as Corona. These are difficult times. Let's talk about what we've heard and what we're looking forward to as far as preparations for the St. Petersburg Congress is concerned with our esteemed panelists. We have with us Paddy Padmanathan, President and Chief Executive of Aqua Power. We've got Leonhard Birnbaum, Chief Operating Officer, Integration at EON, Chair Studies Committee of the World Energy Council, and Gina Dowanik, Manager Partner from Emerald Ventures, Executive Co-Chair, Innovation, World Energy Council. I should also remind all of our viewers that you can ask questions. I'm sure you're familiar with the technology, so at some stage we'll switch into your questions. But let's now talk with our panelists. There are actually four major topics which we can discuss now, 2 years before the Congress, although in a way we are already articulating the agenda. So which new and unconventional actors need to be engaged to enable socially sustainable, climate neutral energy transition pathways? Who can convene the Energy Plus community? How can regional and technological diversity be respected and used as a strength? How can the growing risk of fragmentation of energy transition leadership and extreme polarization be avoided? To which I would also add the question of diversity of energy sources, as was indeed explored by Minister Novak. Let's start with someone whom I already know, Leonhard Birnbaum, who is joining us from a lovely hotel room from what I can see from here. Leonhard, what are your reflections?
I think first, we all acknowledge that we are in unprecedented times, but I think these unprecedented times just accelerate trends which we had been seeing already before. So I would say that COVID actually is accelerating the need to build digital and resilient energy systems. And that was a challenge even before COVID. Yeah? It's clear that we have to integrate significantly more new players. And that was a challenge which we had already before COVID, which was driven by innovation. So maybe my thesis today is we should not get intimidated by the challenges and the uncertainty which is right now on the table. We should just acknowledge that we have to continue to do our job, but we have just to do it faster. And we have to acknowledge that part of that job is that it's not us providing to a society something, it's us actually involving society in providing something, which is the task in the future.
Leo, let me ask you a difficult one, but I've been asking this question to everyone. Example, last week we had a very interesting session on ESG technically, but essentially on energy at the Rousseau British Chamber of Commerce. BP, Agreco, Nornickel were involved. Asked them about the nature of the calls for changes. Because on the one hand, we hear all the niceties, even from the energy companies these days, not to mention government policy, about going green and decarbonization. But on the other hand, some cynics would say that the whole debate is not about idealism. It's about redistributing government and, say, EU subsidies when changing the paradigm of how energy operates. How would you answer that?
I would answer that the cynics are wrong. The whole topic is about innovation. Let's not look back whether we have been efficient with our energy policies in the last 20 years. But as a matter of fact, we have introduced innovations into the system on the generation side, solar and wind, on the distribution side, in the way we can actually run smart grids, on the demand side, in the way in which actually consumers can take control over their own demand. And these innovations now actually change the system. And innovations will stay around no matter what we do. Now, the one challenge that we have is lots of money is being put on the table, which can accelerate these trends. Now, obviously, if you put a huge pile of money on the table, everybody's rushing to try to get as much as possible from that. But I would not say that this is the driver of the development. The money would not be on the table if there wouldn't be innovation in the first place. So I would just say the energy transition is not about politics. It's not about subsidies. It's about the innovation and the certain will of society which has led to these innovations.
There's this lovely phrase from the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals about the energy being affordable and sustainable. Here in Moscow, a very interesting article on hydrogen was published just 2 days ago by the leading Kommersant daily, which compared prices of the gray hydrogen, the green hydrogen, and the blue hydrogen. So the hydrogen which comes out of hydrolysis, usual hydrolysis, and natural gas stands at around $1 plus per kilo, while the kilo of hydrogen produced by hydrolysis based on renewables stands at about $3 per kilo. Can we still talk about sustainable and affordable energy for different sorts of societies all over the world? That's my question for, I would say, Gina Demanik.
Hi. Yeah, I probably Patty is in a much better position than I am to talk about the affordability of green hydrogen. But I would also like to mention, I mean, the money does chase the opportunity. So if we didn't see the opportunity and the viability, the commercial viability, people like us, like in the venture capital world, would not be so interested in financing these technologies. And it goes from obviously digitization, the whole topics of decentralization, decarbonization, electrification. We've seen a lot of technologies backed not just by the venture world, but then going into the large corporates. And green molecules is next, right? Everybody is talking about it. It's a sector that we have been looking at for the past 20 years, but did not see the market demand really for that, because we didn't see the economic viability of that. But that is definitely changing, right?
Well, the reason why I asked this question is also because where you are, where you come from. You come from one of the most prosperous corners of the world, where Switzerland and Italy merge. So there I can envisage, and I actually know personally, people who are happy to pay a high price for a better future. But what about such projects for developing world? Are there economics there from your point of view, venture capitalist?
Sure, there definitely are. I mean, this will definitely be a geographic differentiation for certain areas of the world. In Switzerland, in this area of Europe, Central Europe, renewable energy is not nearly as cheap as it could be. Yes, we're also in a pocket where you've got consumers willing to pay much higher prices for renewable energy. But as you note, that's not even a viable option for many parts of the world. But in those areas where there is very cheap renewable energy, you definitely will be able to reach a more economic, attractive solutions for the whole green hydrogen. And to the extent that you can then transport that in an efficient way, then we can make it available throughout the world, right?
I was recently corrected by an expert in coal industry in this country, because I, old-fashionedly rather, still thought that there are around 1 million miners and members of their family. As it happens with the development of new technologies, there are 150,000 miners in this country, which produce twice as much coal as they used to do in the Soviet times, when there was this massive industry. Now, coal has been mentioned during the last 48 hours, but could be a source of hydrogen. Let's still play with the hydrogen notion. Would you be happy to buy hydrogen produced out of coal? Or you already think that, no, the things must be clean, and I may pay a higher price in order to satisfy myself with my view of the world?
Well, we're in venture capital, right? So we're looking at new technologies. We're looking very much at the trends, and the trends are definitely on the more environmentally friendly, on lots of ESG. If you see utilities very much changing their strategy to favor renewables. So we will be looking more towards innovative technologies which are capitalizing on the renewable energy sources and not coal.
Pani Padmanathan, what are the real drivers of the energy transition?
The biggest driver for me is technology. I mean, I think people are not really grasping where technology is taking us, the solutions that it already has offered. So just the conversation that we were just now having a few minutes ago about hydrogen. So you're absolutely right. You quoted some very correct numbers, $1, $3. But that $1, how did we get to that $1? We got to that $1 over the last 25 years of producing 70 million tons of hydrogen using the methane reforming process. Whereas today we produce hardly anything using the electrolysis process. Whereas 75% of the cost of the electrolysis process is energy. We are now in certain parts of the world able to produce renewable energy during the day and even well into the night because of wind energy at less than 2 cents per kilowatt hour, a price at which never before in human history have we been able to generate electricity at that price. Using that electricity, we can really now start to scale up hydrogen. As we start scaling up hydrogen, exactly like what happened to photovoltaic energy. So the same 2 cents 5 years ago was 8 cents. 10 years ago was 16 cents or 15 cents. So exactly the same trajectory. More innovation will pile in as the market grows, and that cost will come down. The only thing that we can discuss, or we should be discussing, is about how fast can we get there? What are the drivers that would take us there? The trajectory is there. It's going only one way. It's not going to go backwards. It's about how fast we can make it go by becoming more ambitious and by collaborating much more. That's it for me.
In a polite English conversation, you used to use words literally and deliberately. These days you say virtually, but I think we're still enjoying our virtual format. Let me now come back to Angela. Angela, now we've heard from our panelists, and also we've heard to Minister Novak, and I want to come back to one of the topics that we raised during the conversation. Yes, there is a theory in this country, which is to be the host of the next forum in St. Petersburg, that some of the initiatives by companies like BP, who've recently announced that they become an integrated energy company rather than an oil and gas company, are driven by the fact that their own oil and gas fields are running dry. Whereas in Russia, you have huge resources of oil and gas, so why should countries like Russia think about it?
Well, I think the answer is in the word integrated, and the need thinking about where demand is going to come from. That's what I said in my opening remarks, is we're living in a world where we're moving from a leadership mindset of supply side thinking to demand driven solutions. And so societies are demanding clean and affordable energy solutions, and producers of energy and distributors of energy and service providers of energy have to meet that demand. And there's no single form of energy. We need it in the form of heat and cooling, electricity and liquid fuels. And we have many uses of energy, and there's no silver bullet solution. So I think for countries that are major producers of oil and gas, it's about, as Paddy said, the opportunity. It's not about the risk, it's about positioning for the opportunity.
Leo, what opportunities are we talking about here?
So the opportunities are that, first of all, we're going to need more energy in the future, and we have to make that energy accessible, affordable, reliable, and climate neutral. Otherwise, we create another crisis. And whether you're in coal, oil and gas, renewables, hydrogen, electrification, you all have a part to play. IPCC, the government, the global government scientific community perspective says we need all technologies and innovation to play a part. There's huge regional diversity in energy systems, and so the opportunity spaces are many, not singular.
Leo, let me come back to you with the same question about the opportunities. Let's advertise the World Energy Council even more. So offer us an impartial view of things.
Well, I might go back actually to 2016. When we first launched the scenarios, we actually raised the issue that it's not peak oil which will be the problem, it will be peak demand. And actually what we have seen now in the last year has just, brought the question to the forefront, have we been even too conservative in our estimates? We actually, by the way, we need significantly more electricity, but if we want to achieve our climate target, we need significantly less primary energy. I just would like to make that very clear. And what that means is, I would say for Russia, for example, for countries which have really great reserves, they actually will be probably the ones that have the longest time in which they can benefit from those resources because they are clearly the most competitive ones. But for risk management purposes, they should actually look at other opportunities in parallel. So what I would just say, it's a question of, not putting all eggs in one basket, of relying on something that has worked in the last 20 years and assuming it will work in the next 20 years. So the opportunities are clearly there if you can build ecosystems. So we have customers today which want to invest money. Money is chasing opportunity. We just heard it from Gina. Actually, I can tell you there is so much money out there which is looking for investments, especially in the long term, with a moderate risk profile, which is what we have in infrastructure. And so I would say the opportunities leverage the technologies to create opportunities for investments in the long run, which actually are good for the competitiveness of your country.
And petrochemics as well as a parallel thing, but we're not talking about this here. Gina, let's talk pragmatically and practically. So you've got the money, there are actors out there. What would you tell them about your willingness to invest in this or that? What are the long-term investments with moderate risks, I think I'm quoting, there right now. Imagine myself as a potential creator of something with which I come to you. What would you say?
So we're probably a little bit earlier stage than the infrastructure guys. So we're taking higher risks, looking for also higher return. But I think, there's a saying we have in venture capital that sales solves everything, right? So what we're really looking for are entrepreneurs who have not only been very innovative coming up with a new solution, but have been able to adapt that really to the market need. And they need to engage very early on with the incumbents, right? The incumbents are the ones who not only own the assets, but also own the channels to the market and have the most influence, if you'd like, on whether certain technologies will be adopted or not. So we're really looking for those entrepreneurs who have managed to engage with the incumbents. And there are obviously many different types of, and if I take utilities for an example, in the world, some of them are very open to innovation, very innovative themselves, and very engaged with the startup community, so have their own open innovation culture. And so we're looking for those early commercialization proof points, if you'd like, and then we come in and help them actually to expand that to throughout the world, give them then the contacts to many other types of customers. And to go back to something that I think Angela was mentioning before about the fact that energy needs to be available everywhere. I think one of the challenges is that not all, if we take electric utilities, not all of them are really in the place and have the resources themselves to scout new technologies, to have open innovation types of engagements. And I think that's the real challenge, is how do we bring the new technology, not just to the giants like we have here on the panel, but also to the smaller, medium-sized utilities that are in perhaps emerging markets.
And small and medium-sized countries in the developing world. By the way, I've certainly noticed the optimism by the panel yesterday, the day before yesterday rather, on Latin America. We at the Global Energy Association, together with Ross Congress, our beloved co-organizer today, published last week our own view of the Latin American market, where we are, to be honest with you, slightly less optimistic. Yet we underlined the example of a country called Uruguay, a small country, no carbon, no nothing, well, the country has been extremely successful with the renewables, and it certainly works. You may accuse me of saying that because I do have a personal connection with that country, but that's a fact. Now, let me offer you another example about my life. I don't think I've shared with all of you my passion. I am a passionate and somewhat crazy mushroom picker. I am. And in these last years, I've noticed that I typically pick my last mushrooms of the season in the 20th of October, which is a paradox. It had never been like that before. So the climate is changing before our eyes. I can witness it in my forest. Well, with my wife, of course, enjoying more mushrooms by the end of October. But speaking of this seriously, about this view of the planet that we have, about the need to change, who must be the driver of these changes? What's the ideal cocktail of government regulation, big company self-esteem, society's demands? How, well, we all talk passionately about it, but how on an ideal planet, which is certainly not this one, things should work? Paddy, may I come back to you with this question?
Sure. Yeah, that's an important sort of subject to be discussing about today. What you are seeing is that, okay, so energy is getting democratized. So technology is allowing people to put a panel on top of their roof and start generating electricity. And knowledge is democratized. So everybody now knows about the climate change, the subject. A lot of people now are talking across the world. So it's about now harnessing that bottom-up sort of push, which we are starting to see. You're starting to see people going and pressurizing shareholder meetings to get people out of coal, out of this, out of that. So definitely that, whether we like it or not, that movement is already there. It's about how we start to accelerate and widen that community. So we're still going to need the policymakers to help us, convene us, educate, spread the word. But but they are going to have to work with the lowest and the lowest and the lowest levels of community structures. And what we are seeing in many parts of the world, the community structures are diversifying. There are more and more and more structures now at local level, at village level, in very rural areas, in local councils, and they have all now got access to knowledge, and they have all got access to the enabling tools. So I think all of us become the actors, not just in our company sense, but in our individual sense, right across the world. So that's what is going to push this up.
I certainly sympathize with villages, no further questions asked, but I'm, to be honest with you, slightly afraid of some of the activists who've been blocking, I'll say the same coal mines. I know this is not exactly a favorite example, but yeah, yes, in Germany, saying to the poor miners, you must get your job essentially, without offering them an alternative. How do you see this?
I think that the opportunity of reconfiguring the energy systems, and also we focus so much about reconfiguring, by the way, but in reality, as we need more, as the world becomes more electric, turns more towards electricity and so on and so forth. In fact, the systems need to grow anyway. So massive capacity additions are required in central level as well as at sort of rooftop level. There is an enormous amount of opportunity to include and change these people who have been in a different form of employment. Again, the only way you're going to do this is by working at the local level. You're not going to be able to kind of pass central laws or central policies that is going to deal with 500 people who are going to go out of a job in one coal mine. It's about, in that area, people starting to know, for example, at a very simple level, putting rooftop panels, creating entrepreneurs in providing those panels and in maintaining those panels and in interconnecting those panels. There's so much of technology, by the way, that is starting to come, where mini grids, and these are all very easy and simple to deploy. It doesn't require a huge amount of training, and it's starting to happen, but it's at a very low level. So the challenge for us is how to showcase these and publicize it so that it becomes broadly accessible. It's about getting the knowledge out. There's a lot happening already.
Well, which reminds me of one of my most memorable filming sessions, which was in Yorkshire, 1999, I think, something like that, 1998 maybe, doesn't matter. I went to the part of Yorkshire which used to be linked strongly to the coal mine. But the reason why I went there is that I went there to see huge, limitless plantations of New Year trees, Christmas trees. First, so people substituted, this with that. But for that, in the UK, and that was a very smart British government's policy, something else was invented. They have 1,000 years lease of that land, 1,000 years. So government regulation is still required. Gina, as you and I are outside the European Union, also so is Angela these days, but it doesn't matter. I'll ask you.
Not yet.
So let's have an impartial conversation between Moscow and Switzerland about the European Union policy. The European Union has recently done something very interesting. Until recently, the EU was quite often, at least by some of the experts that I know, was accused of actually transferring its carbon industries to the developing world by actually, making the shares equal. And I personally listened to a very passionate lecture of a very good professor who was, explaining it and giving some very good examples and digits. Recently, the EU is about to adopt a new policy about what's called the carbon trace, right? So taxing people who produce carbon even outside the European Union and making them to oblige. This is an example of government policy. But is it, I'm sure this is going to be one of the topics in St. Petersburg. I'm 200% sure, because everyone is talking about this now here and some other countries with which I'm familiar. Is this fair?
Yeah, I do believe there is a role for public policy, obviously, informed public policy that understands what the state of the art is, what is actually possible, and not including, kind of talking about scope 2, scope 3 emissions, I think is incorrect. I don't know exactly how they're going to be monitoring that and calculating it, but I do believe that it's not right for companies to just look at their own carbon footprint, but actually look at throughout the value chain. Yes.
Leo, you are still in the heart of the European Union. Any reflections?
First, I mean, on your question on carbon border adjustment taxes, so
Leo, we're not hearing you well, I'm afraid. You got frozen. Leo. Am I the only one who's having problems with Leo's signal?
We'll see which problem.
We can't hear.
I can't hear.
Angela?
Yes, yeah, I can hear you.
Yes, well, you are across the water. There's fog in the English Channel, so once again, Europe is separated from the UK. What do you see in that fog?
I think you're talking about what people talk about as, is it fair that we are locally clean and globally dirty? And I think that Europe is also looking not just at its direct energy use, but as its industrial energy future as well. And the user side of energy is also starting to look at how does it change the way it produces, the way it uses, the way it engages and develops markets. We have these conversations about the circular economy. You can find those conversations about circular carbon economy now in the Middle East. You can also find conversations about producing hydrogen in Russia, in Chile. You can find people talking about the challenges of grid reinforcement and taking renewables to scale in all parts of the world. I think we have to get away from this notion that there's a magic silver bullet solution. There's definitely going to be increasing demand and acceleration of the development of renewables and electrification of energy end uses, but there's still going to be the requirements for heating and cooling and industrial grade energy, and that's going to require lots of different types of technologies and market opportunities. And oil, gas, nuclear, renewables, hydrogen, all are stepping forward. I think we have to stop this artificial polarization between blue, green. We have to talk about carbon efficiency and economic policies that look at the connections between energy policy, social policy, industrial policy, and fiscal policy. So for me, it's moving from a world of single issue solutions and the replication of hierarchy. You asked a very deep philosophical question. We're moving into a world of multiple dimensions. We have the Energy Trilemma Index. Multiple scales, you've got to align local to global. And multi-sectors. We can't just do energy transition from within the energy industry anymore. We have to have this energy plus community effort.
Who can actually create, who can convene the Energy Plus community? We council, surely.
I hope we are. We are convening. We are already the community that convenes across all parts of the energy industry, all sectors, all technologies, all aspects of the value chain. And if we don't convene the other parts of society, then we will risk being convened. And the way convening is happening at the moment is increasing the risks of fragmentation globally. So we have to be able to convene as a whole community around a vision of an integrated and hybrid energy future that delivers affordable, reliable, clean and just energy access to everyone, everywhere.
Angela, now that we've lost signal with our German friends, he'll be back, I'm sure. Let me share something very important between you and me as two countries outside the EU in Europe. You won't believe that, but there are people in this country who greatly regret the consequences of Brexit, and I'll tell you why. They said until the UK was in the EU, the UK was an ally of the Russian nuclear energy as far as lobbying the EU regarding the nuclear energy is concerned. And now that the UK is out, look at what's going on in Germany. So you have very interesting paradoxes sometimes when people traditionally see each other as people who potentially don't understand each other, but who are actually on the same side. And this is a great advantage of the We Council, I should say, a great advantage, because people here shall speak peace upon each other. We've got some questions coming in. So the first one is from Yana Popkostova. Slavic name, I don't know where I put the Popkostova, I think. How can we transfer increased local innovation and give local startups greater access to funding, VC, and resources? I think that's the question for Gina to begin with.
Mm. No, so in the case of Emerald, right, we invest globally. So I think that there are, in a lot of the corporate venturing guys also invest globally. I think the issue there, and we've talked about it in earlier sessions, is the ecosystem. How does the ecosystem actually function well? Because the VCs will be reluctant to go in to certain jurisdictions where we don't feel that there's stability, where we don't think that there's enough also co-investors, where there's not a great enough talent pool, that there aren't early adopters for the technology, a very supportive government policy for entrepreneurs and for maybe even matching funding type of programs, which we find in many parts of the world. So, you know, you can have a fantastic entrepreneur with a great idea, but to really attract sufficient funding to bring that company to cash flow break even, you're going to need the entire ecosystem to actually work well, which unfortunately means that a lot of entrepreneurs actually leave their home country and go to a country which they feel that has a much more promising environment, which I think is extremely unfortunate. I wish that the governments would kind of recognize what the critical pieces are of that ecosystem and take action to improve that so that they don't have the brain drain.
How do you break this vicious circle?
Well, I think that you know, it's really the role of government. It's not the role of a VC to go in and fix the ecosystem in a country, right? It's the role of government, you know, kind of going together with the corporates in that location, going with the academia in that location, finding ways to attract funding, like I mentioned, these matching funding type of programs that exist. It's really, I think, their responsibility at the end of the day to properly assess their ecosystem, their innovation ecosystem, and to take corrective action to improve that. And you know, if I think of when we started 20 years ago, it was very difficult to do venture capital type of deals, even in a country, let's say like Germany, which is, you know, in Europe, an incredible place to find energy innovation. So I really do think that that has changed a lot. That's improved dramatically over the years, but it's because government also stepped up and had very clear action plans to improve their ecosystem. And today, investing in Germany is like investing in Silicon Valley.
Paddy, before I ask you to answer the same question, may I ask you an additional one? Have you got any Bulgarian heritage? Any Bulgarian blood? No. Is that Bulgarians are the only nation on earth where when they say no, they do this, and when they say yes, they do this. So I was trying to decipher what you actually meant when you made this movement of your heads when Gina said it's not for the government to regulate things like that.
I agree and disagree. Sorry, so that's why I was okay. Absolutely, you know, it's very difficult to operate as a private actor on your own anywhere in the world. Okay, so you do need an umbrella. But what we see, coming to this very specific question of answering the question of in all these sort of places around the world, there is innovation going on, entrepreneurship. How do they access funding? You know, simple question I ask you. You have got investors, believe it or not, from, let me just pick a country, Venezuela, from Zimbabwe, who are investing money through some venture fund in Switzerland. Why? Because they don't have, well, partly it's because they've got sort of less trust in their country, partly. The other part of it is they don't have the mechanisms that have been established. So Gina is right. What is needed is ecosystems need to be created. There is lots of money. Well, okay, lots, emotive word. There is money at local level. It's about how then the mechanism has been created in order for that money to participate and to fund at the local level. Absolutely right. It's very difficult to persuade somebody who is sitting in Montreal to come and put support of a new effort in Gambia. Obviously, it's going to be much more easier for a Gambian entrepreneur, a wealthy person, to be supporting a Gambian entrepreneur. So it's about creating that at a local level. So this also needs to be pushed down. So again, all of us, people like us, convening through these kind of bodies, can come together to provide the technical support, show how to do it, and okay, maybe seed it at a very modest level. This sort of innovation to push them to the next level, what we are seeing doesn't require a hell of a lot of money. That initial stage, it is risky, but it's not big money. So I think we need to get away from this, that money is in short supply. No, money is not in short supply. It's the knowledge, it's a know-how, and again, courage and conviction that's in short supply.
Can I just add one thing? I think that Patty's right. It's not, money isn't in short supply, and actually the startups, they do need money, but much more than that, they need help. They need connections, they need support, whether they get that support from the VCs or whether there's an accelerator. That's what they really need. They need a combination of money and investors who can actually help them to make contacts to potential customers, build up their management team, access foreign markets. And that's often what's missing. If you think about these, the Gambian example, what's often missing is, let's say, specialized or professional investors in that local economy who can actually connect the company to many different players throughout the world, because there are different geographies who may be more apt to adapt that technology than the local one.
Speaking about geography, Wilkinson is such a diverse and truly international organization that there are questions coming from people whose surnames I'm afraid I may mispronounce, so I do apologize beforehand. Leonard Sheika, I think, is the surname. Correct me if I'm wrong, if some of you are familiar with him. Asks, Angela, could you please explain the concept of locally clean and globally dirty?
Okay, so it would be that the European Union would switch to 100% renewable electricity by 2100, but would still be importing manufactured goods and services from other parts of the world that were still dependent on, let's call it, high carbonly intensive energy or manufacturing processes. So that's basically it in a nutshell. And so, Judge, I'm going to be naughty and just jump on the last one. I want to be very clear. I love the idea of entrepreneurship and these innovation ecosystems, but I also want to make sure that we lay the gauntlet down to challenge the incumbents. We need innovation in incumbency, not just at the fringes. And we need agile elephants. We need people who know how to scale and how to decarbonize oil and gas, who can produce decarbonized goods and services and industrial economy. So I don't want it just to be seen as innovation ecosystems for startups. We also need agile elephants in the innovation game.
Although you never know what happens in some of the areas, typical example being Colombia. will soon run out of its coal reserves. So that's the prediction, that's the forecast. So the two countries which are to fill the gap are Russia and Australia. So when you think about Australia, the first thing which comes to your mind, it's a very environmentally friendly country. But when it comes to economics, you really don't know what happens, especially given the export views. Leo, we lost you for some time, so let me ask you that question, the previous one, which was interestingly explored by the other participants. It was from Yana Popkostova. How can we foster increased local innovation and give local startups greater access to finding VC and resources? Well, of course, looking at things from Germany, you must have a relaxed view of things, but still, could I please ask you to share with us your reflections? Oh, we've lost Leo again.
We lost him, yeah.
The last message from him that I saw is that I am near Frankfurt, but internet is unstable, which in my view is one of the most un-German phrases I've ever heard in my life. But things happen, Right, we're actually approaching the stage where I would ask you to share your last reflections, something which I haven't asked, something which hasn't been asked by the audience. And I must once again explain myself. To be honest with you, I was pouring at you some of the questions which are actively discussed on the Moscow platform when people talk about the WE Council's meeting in St. Petersburg. Of course, the agenda is going to be international, but well, I can see and hear people here who reflect on things. So I've been forwarding some of the questions to you. But let's now come to a stage where, well, I've asked everything I had wanted to. You still consider me a superficial microphone holder and want to compensate. Please go ahead, Gina.
Yeah, I would just like to highlight, I mean, I think that what Angela said is she's exactly right. I mean, we need the incumbents, right? And startups typically will not be successful without the collaboration with the incumbents, right? So it's they're definitely part of the system. And I think that what WEC is doing by reaching out to the startup community, including technology innovation much more in the agenda, is going to accelerate, if you'd like, those relationships between the incumbents who have their own innovation programs, but who also are very much now, open to innovation outside their companies to integrate innovation from outside. So I do think there's a very important role for WEC to play here, for the incumbents who are all part of it, and then embracing kind of the startup community, I think will accelerate that, the adoption of those technologies, and which will definitely then accelerate the financing of those companies. So you'll be accelerating innovation financing, if you like, as well. So I think that's important. I'm really glad to be part of this panel with the incumbents, with super innovative companies like Patty's, and would thank Angela really for embracing the startup community and the venture community as well.
Well, too early for thanks. I'm looking at Patty's picture and realize that our bookshelves are quite similar. Yeah, they are. These are interesting times when you can look into people's homes, right? When will be the next time?
Yes.
Please share with you what you had in mind and which has not been touched upon.
No, I think, well, we've had a good conversation. The way forward is very much about sort of increasing ambition and collaboration and convening these kind of dialogue, creating more attention of what is going on, what is available, what is achievable through the sort of bringing all segments of all participants together, like World Energy Council. So very, very, very supportive of these kind of initiatives, and I think that's what we need. For sure, the diversity of sources of energy and the range of technology becoming available to reduce risk of supply and increase system resilience, and the ability to more directly link better sources with centers of users in the case of bulk capacity, even across regions, and to share across time zones to reduce redundancy of capacity, increase utilization, efficiency, also increase opportunities for nations to collaborate in a world that is unfortunately being divided by narrow interests and self-serving agendas of a view. But I think energy has the ability, cost competitiveness of the energy will have the ability to bring us together. I think we need to focus on where this is taking us. Whether we voluntarily participate or get swept by the tide, we are heading to a world where the cost of energy will be way lower than what it is today. And the access to energy will be way wider than what it is today. Given how energy is the key ingredient to social development and economic prosperity, think of what that will mean for us all. We can accelerate the transition by becoming ambitious and collaborating. That's really what we should all be striving for. It's going to happen. Only issue, how fast can we make it happen?
Angela, you and I don't remember that, but there was this interesting day in history, 12th of July, 1941, excuse me, 12th of July, 1941. That was the day when Moscow and London forged a partnership during the Second World War. In order to celebrate that, the BBC decided to play the Soviet anthem on the BBC. Back then in 1941, the Soviet anthem was the International, which was the song of the International Communist Movement. So the BBC decided to substitute that song with something else, and they played a lovely Russian song in order to greet the new allies. A lot of people still think that that was the moment, the best moment maybe in the relationship between the UK and Russia, but I would correct them. The best moment happened 17 years before that, when World Energy Council was formed together by Moscow, London, and Washington. Now that we are approaching, in 2 years' time, fingers crossed, that the planes will be flying, etc., not just the birds, that we're fast approaching the St. Petersburg Congress of the World Energy Council, and we've just had this session called Road to Congress. What's your dream?
My dream? Well, let me just clarify. In 1923, when we were formed, it wasn't just
18 years ago. So I said 17, 18, yes.
Yeah, in 1923, we were formed with Russia, with the UK, with the US, with Canada, with many other European countries, with China, with Syria, with other countries at the table. So we've always been out of the geopolitical mess. We've always been this neutral, independent, impartial community. And we have always been a community that works with a collaborative imperative. And we have the courage to convene conversations around the full cost to society of building and transforming energy systems faster. And we are engaging in this endeavour of energy for humanity because we're recognising that there is this big shift in the way innovation and energy systems are developing, which is bringing in the demand-driven solutions, the needs of people around the world. There are still 3.5 billion people around the world who have no clean cooking. There are going to be 5 billion soon in the world who don't have enough energy for work, for livelihoods. And shame on us as a world energy community if we can't put aside the politics, if we can't put aside the very narrow economics of marginal costs. Shame on us if by 2022 we can't celebrate a new moment for humanity where we are still reaching for the stars, not a return to the cave or the farm.
Wow. Wow. Angela, I should say thank you after that and disappear from the screen, but we've got several other items which are coming. Now, we have patrons, the Russian patrons of the St. Petersburg Forum, Congress, and friends of the WE Council, who've got some video clips for us. Let's watch together. Hello again. And let me finish this session by sharing some of my reflections upon the structure of the English language. There are accents and accents in the UK. You sometimes say an issue. You sometimes say an issue. Now, we've had a technical issue or issue, but here's the parallel well. We were preparing a congress in St. Petersburg, but because of course the word Russia comes from the word rush. So we were in a bit of a rush and we had a technical issue, but we now have all the video materials available. So let's first of all see the patrons' greetings video from the patrons from Russia.
The energy transition toward a sustainable future for everyone requires consolidated efforts across all sectors and from all actors, including urban communities, consumers, and the broader society. Rosatom invites you to shape the global energy dialogue within the Energy for Humanity paradigm. We look forward to seeing you at the world's biggest energy event, the 25th World Energy Congress in St. Petersburg in 2022.
Dear colleagues, on behalf of Gazprom, I'm delighted to welcome participants to World Energy Week Live. Today, our company is opening a new page in the history of its cooperation with the World Energy Council, which has been bringing together key players in the global energy industry for almost a century. I am happy to announce that Gazprom is joining the World Energy Council's Patrons Program, and this will take our cooperation to a new, truly strategic level. Joining the program is of particular importance for us. St. Petersburg, founded more than 300 years ago to boost goods and commodity trading between East and the West, is a gas industry capital of Russia, a capital of an energy commodity of the future. In 2022, St. Petersburg will become the 25th World Energy Congress, and we highly value the opportunity to host such a prestigious event. And I wish all the participants of World Energy Week Live the best of luck and look forward to seeing you all in St. Petersburg. Thank you.
Dear colleagues, in 2022, St. Petersburg will be hosting the 25th World Energy Congress. It is truly a major landmark event for the energy industry of the whole world. It is impossible to resolve the energy issues of our planet without consolidated efforts of the largest industry leaders, heads of energy agencies and international organizations. I would like to invite you, colleagues, to take part in the 25th World Energy Congress in the city of St. Petersburg.
So let me once again thank our panelists. We had with us earlier Angela Wilkinson, the Secretary General of the WE Council. We had Leonhard Birnbaum from Germany, Gina Domanik, and Paddy, I'm always, let me once again double check, Padmanathan, am I right?
Yes,
good.
Thank you.
With us. It's a final countdown, nearly a final countdown to the St. Petersburg Congress, but it's also a countdown to the networking session, which is to follow. So thank you all of the participants and the panelists, and looking forward to a proper networking in the nearest future. Goodbye.
Energy created life. Ever since the dawn of civilization, humanity explored ways of harnessing energy for its benefit. Energy enlightened us, fueled technological revolutions, and shaped the world as we know it. The ways in which energy is used, traded, supplied, and produced are shifting fast and fundamentally, bringing unprecedented challenges and opportunities. Technological advancement drives energy systems to become decarbonized, digitalized, decentralized, bringing consumers to the forefront. We are entering a new era in global energy, one of energy for humanity. This is the theme of the 25th World Energy Congress. The flagship event of the World Energy Council as leaders gather to work towards an inclusive, sustainable energy future for all. For almost a century, the triennial World Energy Congress has been a unique space for the global energy community to catalyze new cooperations and forge new pathways in the energy transition. With around 5,000 delegates and 18,000 attendees, the Congress connects and inspires leaders and practitioners from around the world. Ministers, C-suite executives, experts and academia, young energy leaders, the Congress hosts the full spectrum of the energy sector and its value chain. The 25th World Energy Congress will take place in Russia, in the beautiful city of St. Petersburg. It is organized by the World Energy Council, the Russian National Committee of the World Energy Council, and the Roscongress Foundation. Welcome to the 25th World Energy Congress. Energy for humanity.